Hello guys, it's 7 p.m. here in Brazil, so you know it's time for another episode of our podcast. This is episode number 8, and it's a beautiful Friday here in Brazil. A little colder than I expected, but it's fine. Today's the 25th of June, so we know, if you know Brazil, we know we are in the south hemisphere, so it's winter here. It's my least favorite season of the year. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about what I consider to be the best movie ever made in Brazilian territory. The name is Tropa de Elite. It's a movie from Jose Padilla, the director, and the movie's from 2007, having Wagner Moura, or if you guys prefer, Wagner Moura, the Brazilian actor that rose to stardom after this movie. He was known in Brazil already before that, but after Tropa de Elite he became famous internationally. Now I think he participates in a few Netflix productions. He also worked in the movie Elysium with Matt Damon. So if you guys don't know who I'm talking about, you can see his picture here if you're following this podcast through YouTube. I'm gonna apologize because I am recovering from the common cold. Believe me, it still happens. The weather changed so much, it affected me real bad. So let's go. I had the opportunity to see this movie a couple of years ago, I think. When it came out, it took me a few months to watch, but when I watched it, I was impressed because this movie apparently was, it had its fame constructed through piracy, I guess. I think Brazilians had access to the movie before it came out in the cinemas. But can I say that spoiled the success of the movie? Well, I'm totally against piracy, but I think not even such a bad thing screwed up with the whole success. The movie was amazing. And if you haven't seen it, the name in English is Elite Squad. At least on the Brazilian Netflix you can access it. That's where I watched it from last night. But check out your streaming services to see if you find it. Elite Squad. So it's the story of an elite squad in Rio called BOP. In Portuguese is Batalhão de Operações Especiais, if I'm not mistaken. Let me check this. Batalhão de Operações Especiais, BOP. It's an elite squad that is part of the military police, but at the same time, it's a totally different police. They have, I think, a bigger jurisdiction, and they have access to operations that other cops wouldn't. So one of them is the incursions inside the hills, inside the favelas, or the slums. They are trained to infiltrate the shacks, to infiltrate the alleys of the morros, of the hills in Rio, and neutralize criminals, drug dealers and armed men that are selling drugs and stuff. And they do that perfectly, at least in the movies. So the movie follows the story of two police officers, Matias and Neto, that are going to possibly replace Capitão Nascimento, or Captain Nascimento, played by Wagner Moura. Captain Nascimento is a guy who is about to he has his wife pregnant, and she's about to deliver the baby. So he's looking for a replacement for himself into the police, into BOP, because he can't take it anymore. He is tired of of the life of a police officer, of a boppy, a cop. He's tired of all the things he sees, and he wants to spend more time with his family. His relationship with his wife is going down in the dumps because of the pressure he goes through. Most operations he needs to lead happen at night because they need to make incursions in the hills at night to have an advantage against the criminals. So the movie is all about this, about how his relationship with his wife is going down in the dumps, and how Matias and Neto, the possible captains replacing Wagner Moura or Capitão Nascimento, are trained to be able to fill his shoes. So a big part of the movie is showing the training these guys have to undergo. And the movie makes it clear that the training they undergo is harder than the elite squad in Israel or the military in Israel. So they have to go through intensive physical and mental, psychological training to be able to cope with the violence in Rio. So it's a very entertaining movie, very graphic as well. If you have problems with crime films, with shots, like headshots and gore, don't watch it. But if you're okay with this, if you know how to separate violence from movies, from real life, I think you can watch this. Of course, the movie is not only based on this kind of things. It has a story behind. It has a plot. The characters want to get somewhere. So, but I cannot help but tell you that there are some graphic scenes. But the interesting thing about this movie, as I was watching it last night, to be able to talk to you about this, is that sometimes I forget it's a movie and I think it's a documentary. Of course, there are some exaggerations, like the boppy team is looked at as a superior race, or the guys are above everybody. They are the badasses. They really are badasses, but it sounds like they are superheroes. That's the point. Nothing can affect him or anything. But that's not what really happens in real life. I have seen some docs and some reports about boppy going into the favelas, and of course you cannot expect what you see in the movies happening in real life. Unfortunately, drug dealers have big firepower, and sometimes it's even better than the ones the police uses, because the police acts by the books in general, and these guys don't. So it's even it's unequal what happens in the fight between the police and the drug dealers, unfortunately. But I want to say something to you guys. What this movie calls my attention about is the things that happen in Brazil behind the curtains, because it shows a very corrupt police in Rio de Janeiro, in Rio. It shows scams like between the captains, the sergeants, the lieutenants, the coronels of the police in association with drug dealers to oversee their activities while selling drugs in exchange for what they call merenda, or there's another name for that, I forgot. So they receive kickbacks to be able to work freely, and I'm talking about the criminals, right? They pay kickbacks to be able to work freely in Rio. And the similarity to reality is impressive. I'm pretty sure most of the things you see in this movie, they happen in real life, unfortunately. A corrupt state, corrupt politicians, right? And I'm here only talking about Elite Squad number 1 because a few years later, they also came out with the second movie. And the second movie is a blow in the stomach because it shows how the corruption transcends the state limit and gets to Brasilia, gets to the capital of the state, of the country, and the politicians and the authorities that are supposed to protect us, when in the end they are working for the criminals in exchange for millions and millions of dollars coming from drugs. So it's unbelievable. Let's not talk about the second movie. We can do that on another podcast. But the first movie shows how Rio could be dangerous, how these scams between the police and the criminals could be dangerous. Do they happen? I think so. I think they are part of reality. Maybe not the way that they show, but they happen for sure. And it's not an exclusive problem from Rio. I believe this might happen in major cities in some extent, or some minor or major extent, right? Some places more, some places not so much. But in general, I think you have the corruption problem happening everywhere. And not only in Brazil, I think it happens all around. But it's a very interesting movie. And there are some shocking phrases like, I think he was a sergeant, or a captain. I think he was a captain in the police, not in Bop. The captain, Fabio, says, I make $500 to go up the hill and crossfire with drug dealers. I'm not going to do it. I am definitely not going to risk my life and bring a loss to my family because of $500. So this justification he was giving for taking kickbacks, for being part of the corruption scam that the police in this movie was involved. It's a very interesting movie. It shows a side of Rio that most foreigners don't know. And of course, you cannot take it too seriously, because if you do, you won't come to Brazil at all. You're going to think the place is a jungle. And I have to say that we have very honest people working everywhere, even in the government. And a few years before, I think 1 or 2 years before the Olympics in Rio, the government showed its power when it entered the hills in Rio and removed the drug dealers completely. And they installed military bases on top. I'm not sure this situation persisted, that they kept the bases fed and with the good weaponry, because Rio got to an economic hardship after the Olympic Games. So, but anyways, it's a good suggestion for you guys to watch an action movie from Brazil and to understand why Wagner Moura became popular in the United States after this movie. If you like movies with crossfire and police, this is a wonderful recommendation. And I also recommend you to watch the second movie. The second movie is more like a political criticism. It doesn't show the action in Rio very much, but it's interesting to understand what happens in Brasilia sometimes. You know, some very bad players, they act in the shadows in the government sometimes. So thank you very much for listening to this podcast. Remember, we have new episodes every Fridays at 7 p.m. Don't forget that Mondays and Thursdays on the YouTube channel, we have new videos at 7. All about Brazil, the culture, sports, movies and stuff. Thank you very much for listening and for watching, if you are on YouTube. And see you next Monday. Have a nice weekend, you guys. Bye-bye.